All right, we back. We are back. So for this week, we've got 2 days, 2 fun days of prepping for the next year. Is this thing still working? Okay, that still works. I don't know if it still posts, but I should check that out at some point. But anyway, we've got 2 days this week. I might be back Saturday, might be back Sunday. Who knows? Next week, we need to really pump stuff out. So yeah, this week I'm going to be prepping for this day. What makes you unique? I think we're going to be just following like a Gemini research, deep research, just to start us up for the next month. What makes you unique is the topic. So this is going to include all the stuff that should be in. Actually, let's get a second Stan Richardson document instance. This is going to be part 2. This is going to be part 2. The context of you. So this is where we have to just go into everything here. Understanding your circumstances, nature and nurture, temperament, environment, culture, socioeconomic circumstances, scarcity, hell yeah, belief systems, etc. A lot to cover there. Huge deal. Let's try to do it in 1 month. Yo! Thinking that it was gone. It was long. It was a good run, but it died out. Yeah, I apologize for not having a stream this weekend. I think I was hoping to, but I couldn't. But yeah, unfortunately off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday again. Maybe, probably not Saturday, maybe Sunday. But we need to gear up. I've been enjoying a nice 2 week not hiatus, but a chill after that last video, which took a lot out of me. So I think we're getting ready for December. We're getting ready for next month. I'm sorry, next year. So the scary thing is that we have a lot of tasks. We have tasks that I need to, in theory, get done this month, but I'm not. And then those get pushed to December, and then there's a bunch of stuff I want to do in December too. So what do we have remaining in this? We need to do a read through of the next major section in the document, part 1, experience over time. This is a good time to do it. So I'm trying to line like the stuff we're doing in part 1, line it up with the stuff that we're going to be doing in part 2. So the context of you is what we're really looking for building out in December. However, part 1, the experience over time, which I actually have to do that. Experience over time goes into this idea of predisposition, which allows us to start talking about genetics, nature, and nurture. So this like kind of overlaps. Yo, Filcher, what's good? I tabbed, you went live about 5 minutes later. Hell yeah. Hope all is well. All is well. Hell yeah. Yeah, we're just chilling. We're getting ready. Getting ready for another ramp up of grinding. That said, I've been reading some cool stuff, but I've been reading more like neuroscience consciousness stuff, and I think I'm gonna wait to make a video on it, even though it's cool. I don't think that's what we should be doing right away. So I think I threw that into a later month. But yeah, we need to read through this major section of part 1. This is an easy video. It's literally just me reading something, which is great. Now the question is, should I read this while looking at the screen? Or should I do the same thing I did with the other videos? It's actually a good question. So in the previous read-through videos, the reading videos, it was just me reading off to the side here But I think that's fine because I do want the document up. I want this to be somewhat of a like this is the 2025 reading. So there should be some evidence of what's actually on the page in 2025. And so that people, when people see this, they could be like, wow, the new version is actually quite different from this version. That's kind of cool. So now granted, I could probably get our sidebar in here and do something nicer than this. That's a little bit extra work, but it might lend itself well to the quality of the stream here. That said, I don't know how to do the sidebar with my picture up here. So maybe we just do the low effort one. Plus, there's a lot we have to do, so I might do low effort here. So no teleprompter. Read off to the side. Have just the document here. I think that would be fine. What do we got? 1 day ago. Hell yeah. I like the discussion as well as the abstract paintings in the back. The abstract paintings in the back. Oh. Nice. It's definitely the right direction, but I think a key piece is still missing. Yes. Oh no. Oh no. What have I done? All right, let's save this for later. Let's not do that right now. Okay. So, yeah, we have to do that. We have to complete part 1 referencing effort. I still need to do more citations at least. Like, just get the citations in there. We could do the whole bibliographic complements later. A lot of the stuff that I've been reading on neuroscience and predictive processing, active inference, embodied cognition, all that stuff can be cited, and then I can... I mean, maybe if I have the time, I'll write the whole bibliographic complement, but I really just wish I had another area in my day where I can work on that type of thing. But unfortunately, I don't have that. Short form content. This, I don't know what to do about this because I don't know if I want to like spend a lot of time writing scripts for short form content, or if I should just put a lot of effort into finding short form content pieces from the stream. I think that might be most conducive to building the entire community here, where it's like, hey, we're doing a lot of stuff on stream. Stream is actually quite important towards our whole trajectory. We actually do a lot on stream, and yeah, we talk about some cool things on stream, and we can get little clips of those, put it into our short form. That way I could I don't know if I want to spend a lot of time. I probably should spend time at least making some scripted short form things. It's just that the topics that we're covering, I feel like we first need to do like a proper video on, like a proper script that kind of set, similar to the document. It needs to set like this is the full stuff that we're pulling from, and then we can start getting into like, I don't know, interesting little short tidbits. But maybe if things come up, I can write something for that. I mean, it should be really easy. It's like a page worth of text. Research, read through. So this is what I've been reading. The Routledge Handbook of Embodied Cognition. This thing is long as hell, but fortunately not all the chapters I find are necessary to read. So hopefully this doesn't take too much longer. I mean, I think I can certainly get done this by the end of December. It's just hopefully we can get done this sooner so that I can start reading stuff that pertains to the what makes you unique, because I really only have like an hour a day where I just read. Short form is its own medium to master. Yeah, that's the other. That's another good reason why I should just jump into it. I should just jump into it knowing that what I start making is going to be like weird or bad or not as good as it will be, and slowly I'll just learn. So I think that is a good point. We need a start in order to master. Okay, we got organize all part 2 notes with relevant major sections. Right, part 2 right now is this weird mix where we've got our actual outline ending with this epilogue to be determined, and then we have all of the sections once again. So we have to get all these lower sections into the new outline up top, which is something I could do off stream and I could do on Wednesdays, but not this. Like, I would work on it next Wednesday, but I should try to spend some time working on that if I have the time. These days are going to be pretty hectic. Maybe these won't be. We'll see. Prepare Substack with monthly updates. Right. We need so the other thing we have to do is okay, updates, community updates. We need to catch up with stream summaries, which I started the effort towards. We've got, if I can get this going, we are up to November 12th. So we're doing well. We're pretty close. Not in stream summaries, but in transcriptions. So, and then we need to prepare the Substack with monthly updates. And this is going to be a lot of fun. I need to write a script that like formats all of the transcripts so that I could throw them all into Gemini, such that Gemini could see their dates. Right now they're titled by the Twitch VOD ID rather than the date. So, networking. Explore the self-help science philo community on various platforms. I guess we've slowly kind of been doing that, but we haven't done a huge... every time I try doing this, like, I don't really know which direction to go. Hopefully, we can build a following that can tell me where I should be going. And that would help out a ton. Research other similar communities. Right, it's hard to do that just out of brute force. Do comprehensive research on relevant content creators. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of that because that's kind of implicit. Reach out to content creators about collaborative discussions. That I could start doing. That's a little scarier for me because I just haven't done it before. But we could and should start doing that if it makes a lot of sense. Like, I think what really has to happen here first is I have to find a content creator where it's like, oh, okay, we should have a discussion like right now. And so far, I don't think I've found any content creators where that was the case. Other than obviously huge content creators where it's like, okay, obviously I could have like a good discussion with Alex O'Connor. Like right now, it's just that there's no incentive for him to get on here. All right, upcoming schedule, December theme, what makes you unique? So as I was saying earlier, this is like the context of you. This is going to open up part 2 after the... Oh no, this is the prologue. Before we can effectively set and pursue goals, we need to understand and manage the universal processes and conditions of the mind that enable and hinder our deliberate action. We have to write this a little slightly nicer, but this is kind of the idea. It's like, what are we actually playing with? And this is where we get into things like attention and focus, motivation, biases, concerns. But first, like, I think it would be nice to start off with the context of each of us. Like, what is actually at play here? Now, there's a chance that maybe context of you should go underneath these two. Like, that might make sense, because different people have different concerns and biases, and then this allows us to actually connect it up to that. Same with attention and focus. People have different levels of conscientiousness, etc. That's stuff we have to talk about in the context of you. So yeah, that actually makes more sense, potentially. Regardless, I think we should start with this. This is going to be fun, and it's absolutely necessary. Hopefully this shows that I'm trying to take it seriously, that this is something that everyone could use, even though everyone's got their own setups and stuff like that. Racking my brain. Can't think of any content creators in this field yet. All good. Thank you for giving it a go. Yeah, definitely let me know if someone pops up. The field, in theory, should be quite broad, and it doesn't have to be someone with as much of as comprehensive of a view or a scope, but yeah, we're gonna have to start talking. Like, if there's even a content creator that's like thinking about these ideas, like now we could start getting into that. I think we've just kind of been stuck because we've been talking about the lower level part one stuff, and the part one stuff we have to be really careful about who we're platforming and talking with. And when I say platforming, I don't mean like because it's like half of it is because I'm giving them exposure in terms of like the viewers, but you could say, oh, you don't really have that many viewers, so why does it matter who you're platforming? Half of it is that I don't want to be exposed to certain certain ideas that I already know are like potentially a hindrance. I don't want to like get stuck in some realm. I don't want any audience capture to be now pushing me toward. So we have to be very careful. I know a place to start might be easy to find content creators interested in Robert Sapolsky's work, for example. And what was Robert Sapolsky into? Neuroscience. Oh, right. Okay, I recognize him. Biology, neurology. 68 years old. Neuroendocrinology, particularly relating to stress. Oh yeah. Trouble with testosterone. Yeah, so okay, stress and stuff, that's going to come up pretty soon, right? That's where do we have that? Don't we have yeah, no, that's literally going to be here for the foundational support system. Our cognitive abilities are not separate from our physical state. Managing our biology is a practical way to boost mental clarity and resilience. Sleep, nutrition, exercise, stress management, relaxation, social relationships. This is going to be a crazy month. I don't even know if I don't even think I gave this a month. Oh, jeez. Well, that's tricky. I have a talk of his on my to watch list. Well, you hadn't seen it yet, or you've seen it and you thought it was amazing, so you listed it. Haven't seen it yet. Okay. Yeah, no. Let me know if his reputation drew me to it. Yeah, if he's got valuable stuff to say, then we'll definitely want to jump into that. Back in Sapolsky's day, you could just waltz into the neuroscience department at a respectable university with a degree in anthropology. Is that what he did? Or is that what you're saying that other people did? Yeah, and if it's more competitive now, I mean, obviously we're not going academic, but if it's more competitive now, then we must compete. We must have some good stuff to talk about. Okay, so this is what I was originally working on last week under the name Retrospective on Consciousness, but I think that it's beneficial to just have some simplified, what do I say? Simplifies the overarching perspective on intuition, science, and pragmatism. Yeah, I think we should have some like very simple, a video simply explaining the type of view I have about the part one stuff pre-freedom. So everything pre-conceptualizing our understanding. I think we should have just like a really simple video on. That's the stuff that we were talking about last week. Maybe I have a subsection about this retrospective on consciousness, but I don't think this is necessary actually, because the retrospective on consciousness should talk about consciousness labels and how this doesn't put us into any. So this is like this might be a second thing, but I don't know when I would want to do that. But we need a 3-video series on making sense of meaning and understanding. So this is going to be part 1 stuff, but actually reading part 1 stuff without doing the reading. So like I think it would be beneficial to have like a video just like just about experience in the moment up until we start the science, but not the science. So this is going to be our like phenomenology. This is going to be us pointing out that meaning is something we experience rather than just something that's just like inherent on objects, like this, as if this pen has just like properties on it. So I think that's going to be important. Then we can do one where we could do a video specifically on the relevant science of experience and the making sense of experience, like these 2 things. And then we can do a video summarizing this stuff. And ideally like much more punchy 10-minute videos, 20 tops, just getting the main stuff here. We don't have to go into like, we don't have to go deep into the minutia of the terminology and whatnot. I just think it would be beneficial for people who are now paying attention to this channel, our 189 subscribers here, for them to get the shtick in a way that's compelling. Like this is me looking at a teleprompter saying these things, and I think that might be beneficial. Build a series of questions to ask other content creators in the space. So this would be something where it's like, if I ever do get into a call with other content creators, what should I be asking them? And it would be stuff like what should be included in the document. Where are there communities that we should check out? These are like the things I've been saying already today, but I think this would be beneficial to ask. Read through the brain that changes itself highlights. So this goes along with our experience over time stuff, discussions. Right, we're doing the read through of experience over time. I think we should just do this at this point. Like a huge part of what makes us each unique is our understanding, quote unquote, like what we are, like our belief systems, our belief structures, and highlighting how malleable our understandings are, or highlighting the limitations of that malleability is really important and apt for this month. That said, the tricky part of me planning these things out is that chances are when we do the research for what makes you unique, I'm going to want to make a bunch of other stuff. So I don't know how I'm going to deal with all the stuff we need to do. We'll see. We're going to have to do some heavy prioritization, heavy vibe checks, just general vibe checks, what I'm vibing, and listening to the community. So if there's anything that you all want, just let me know. Anything you think we should be covering. I don't know if I should really do this, but research comprehensive marketing plan. What more should we do to push the channel? Community document. I guess we should do this. Maybe this would be good for December, planning for the next year. And then a video perhaps on inferentialism as a way to think about, this is not the title I would go with, but the fact that we each have our own like idiosyncratic understanding, our own unique understanding. Like inferentialism is a nice way we can think about meaning, where we infer meaning. It's not like meaning's there. It's like each person infers meaning. Now, we kind of could cover that already. So maybe that's part of this 3-video series. Just, similar to how we talk about inference we actually don't talk about inference until we get to conceptualizing our understanding, because it is a way to conceptualize our understanding. So I don't know, maybe we'll save that for later. With respect to collaborations, searching for Robert Spolsky on YouTube brought up these creators. Oh. just as a proof in point that potential collabs could be easy. Right, but the tricky thing is like how many views does each, like it's not that there's no one out there talking about the topics, it's that these channels have like crazy subscribers. So I mean, I could just do the old cold call. I could just start sending things out, and maybe that's what we have to do. But yeah, that is probably what we have to do, honestly. It's a little bit shot in the dark. Is it just oh, this is like a team, right? Oh my gosh, 8.41. Yeah, like I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any shot that we even get anywhere near the these people. Philosophical trials. Oh, that sounds fun. Philosophical trials. Platform for philosophically oriented discussion with world-renowned academics. If you happen to enjoy thinking about language mathematics, then this channel is tailored for you. So this is tough as well. I'm not going to be able to get on here. I'm not an academic at all. Oh, and they're gone. They're not here, unfortunately. Brains on Trial. Let's check it out. Mutual interest. It's a niche field. Yeah. Haven't looked yet into any of these yet. Yep. No, I'm just checking if there's any that it would like make sense where they've shown interest in just talking to random tubers. But I'm concerned that these are looking for the real deal thinkers here, even though they've got very low views. I imagine they're trying to talk to the people with the actual stuff and not just people who are interested, as I would describe myself. Econ talk. I don't know if we can get into econ talk. Status and tribalism. Oh no. Man, these are really low reviews. Like ideally we find someone that's just you know, kind of curious and willing to talk with anyone. All right, this one's a little too political. The next one's a little too political. Oh, really? Oh, nice. Alaneda from MASH. Nice. We'll find people. We'll make it work. So the question is always just how long it'll take. We're only moving forward. Let's build a concrete path to actually close the gap between our physical brain and our subjective experience. They're out there. Oh, nice. Thank you. Oh, this is indulgent, but this is Substack. I was so proud about this. What am I looking for? Oh, nice. Oh, we're getting some follow. Oh no, I have to respond to people. I responded to this, right? Oh no, this is This was a response. They liked my comment, then they responded. That's fair. Okay, this is something I have to respond to. Okay. So, what I was referring to is here. Oh, this made me so happy. So they're saying some really nice things, but the quote they put in was, "We cannot fill the gap with a description for the same reason we cannot taste a recipe for a cake." I appreciated that one a lot. It's as if they knew that was my favorite quote. Yo, Energy Domter, what's good? What is poppin'? Chomsky used to respond to email for 3 hours a day. A very approachable guy. Took public outreach seriously. Hell yeah. Chomsky might be a little hot right now, based on headlines that I've seen in the past couple days. But otherwise, well, there you go. Good quote. I have a question. What's the question? I have an answer. All right, then we have... Okay, inferential. So the only thing I would want to get into inferentialism about is pointing out that we can't think about, like, words as having this, like, as like holding all the meaning. So something like this. Actually, I don't know if this is the right way to say this. Yeah, this is pretty confusing, but saying like not A is not equals to the same thing as like the absence of A. I feel like the actual linguistic example has always been like double negatives. I think I talked about that. How like a double negative would actually have different meaning than just not including any negatives. Also, you would infer something different from someone saying something like it is determined by A or B, than if someone says it is determined by A or it is determined by B. I think we should just gut this, actually. I think we'll talk about inferentialism at some other point. I don't think this is the strongest little topic. So, do you believe the idea of Norbert Wiener of a feedback loop is relevant for the document? Let us ask. Do you believe that the idea of is relevant for my document? Oh, I take him at his word that his only involvement with Epstein was once for financial purposes. Rose took care of all that, to my understanding. Epstein had long been a fundraising conduit for MIT. Yeah, I don't know anything about it, so if that's the explanation, then fair enough. Did seem like he was just kind of involved in a lot of things, and he was interested in people with academic clout. To be honest, if a rich guy who seems chill invited you to his private island, would you go? I don't know. That's pretty sketchy. I mean, I guess you would. You'd have to go. Like in that's literally the start of Ex Machina, right? Maybe that's the lesson though. Like when a rich person invites you to anything, you just don't go because the collateral is way too high, and you're not able to handle rich people collateral. Chomsky just wanted to chill with drinking a coconut under the palm trees. Yeah, it's like if you accidentally piss off, like let's just say you just piss off one of the rich person's friends, like for no good reason. Like they can use like a very small portion of their wealth to just ruin your life. I don't know if that's how rich people operate, but I think that's the plot of Indecent Proposal. Is it actually? Because that's pretty funny. I haven't seen it. All right. Yes, the concept of the feedback loop and the broader field of cybernetics is not only relevant but foundational to the logic you are building in this document. While your document heavily leverages modern iterations of this idea, specifically homeostasis and predictive processing, Viner proposes the ancestral engineering and mathematical logic that bridges the gap between a physical world and goal-directed behavior. All right, so I'm speculating, Energy Dompter, that it is relevant. However, like we would leverage these newer versions of what we need, because like homeostasis, especially described as allostasis, along with predictive processing and active inference and the free energy principle, like these are what they're talking about like today. So I think we would use that. However, let's see. The term cybernetics comes from that meaning steersman or governor. This etymology aligns perfectly with your document's central metaphor of navigating life and determining a path. Described how a system corrects its course by measuring the difference between its current state and its goal state, then feeding that error back into the system to adjust behavior. So I wonder if when Viner's talking about this, they're specifically considering like deliberate planning versus conceptualizing what's actually happening under the hood. Right. This concept is the mechanical explanation for your freedom through alignment. When you discuss, okay, you're describing a cybernetic negative feedback loop. Yeah. So I'm curious at what level of abstraction they're talking about. 1 second. The tension between determinism and agency, intentionality. Viner's work was revolutionary because it explained how a purely physical system could exhibit teleological, purpose-driven behavior without needing a mystical ghost in the machine. Right? That's what we've been talking about with consciousness. In the implicit activity, agency, intentionality, you could use that to bolster the argument that agency is compatible with the physical universe. So what was the... what is specific argument for how physical matter can end up facilitating its own feedback loop? How high fidelity is this compared to modern theories such as allostasis, active inference, and free energy? I'm also wondering whether Weiner was talking about these things at the level of abstraction of simply neurodynamics, or at the cognitive, actually I'll just say the phenomenological level of self-conscious, deliberate reflection and planning. All right, so this is just kind of connecting it to everything. So I'm trying to figure out what he was actually talking about. Rich dude wants one night with guy's wife for $1 million. Jesus. Yikes. That's what that movie's about. Wow. I had no idea. Ayo. Okay, so then January, I was thinking the theme could be attention and focus. That's what is essentially either next or first in part two. So this is going to be stuff regarding. This is when we start talking about mindfulness. Not necessarily meditation in depth, but this is where we talk about mindfulness, ADHD, how temperament might factor in. So this is why getting like temperament out of the way up here might be good, because then we could always talk about temperament and stuff like that in each of these sections. It's either we do it that way or the other way around. Motivation, the role of dopamine, intrinsic versus extrinsic rewards, I guess. The progress principle, dealing with concern. There's going to be like 25 other things that we have to talk about in this category of what's affecting our agency here. And then the next month, biases and habits. This is where we start talking about all the things that are going to get in the way, social dynamics, cognitive biases. Just the irrationality involved here, dealing with trauma, emotional regulation. Okay, emotion regulation as a skill is going to be in the next one. But we don't have anything set up for that. We want meditation month, and I just put that as March. And that's something that's happening in here, right? So meditation's in this. Meditation can help counteract the obstacles, and it can also help bolster these core levers. That's why meditation is here. Now we could move thinking back. Thinking's like what comes next. It's like when we're identifying what to pursue. Now we have to make sense of where we're at, what's going on, what we want to do. Deliberate reflection, thinking. This is where we start going into like logical fallacies, logical reasoning, honesty, what it means to be honest with yourself. Making things explicit, being precise in speech. So like literally we have to talk about grammar. We should talk about grammar. Being open, tools for thinking, speaking therapy, social discussion, language models. This is where we talk about language models. This is a lot to do in 1 month. This is a big month. Okay, so let's actually have, I want to keep this as meditation month, but this is going to be meditation and friends. And friends is referring to the other things that happen in here. So sleep, nutrition, exercise, stress management, relaxation, social relationships, sunlight, ice baths, medication, performance-enhancing drugs, etc. Emotional regulation, all kinds of things that can help you chill out and get going, Then we've got April. We got thinking. This is when, so for the March one, I think it would be cool to have a video on neurophenomenology. There's this whole branch that I found where some scientists are considering that a way to more effectively or more precisely study neural correlates is by getting straight up meditation ballers and having them like systematically participate in experiments. Like there's a bunch going on there, but this allows them to get very high resolution responses rather than just what people kind of intuit regularly. So I think that's pretty interesting. Worth a video. Keeping the ego in check. This is less about meditation, but this is kind of linking back to that it was the consciousness video, the one that I responded to. Dr. K was reluctant to discuss his personal spiritual achievements because he understood that speaking that into existence, having other people hear it, would affect his own understanding, and it would affect it in a way that he thinks would be pervasive. Potentially, it would be ego boosting. It would make you feel a way that you don't want to be feeling, even though it's like pleasurable in some sense, right? The effects even indulging a thought has. So yeah, I would want to go even deeper. Like, let's not even. Sometimes it's worth not even indulging certain thoughts at all, because you know it's gonna send you down a path that you don't want to go down. I want to do this type of video. This is going to be a controversial video where I kind of talk about the inherent expectations in meditation practices. This month needs to be like, we want to spend a lot of time just like really touching every facet of this field. But unfortunately, we just don't have enough time for all the stuff we're trying to do. This is, I really need to, I need to replace my job ASAP if we want to actually get all these things done. Am I going to read the answer by ChatGPT? Yes, sorry. All right, the specific argument for how physical matter can facilitate a feedback loop is grounded in thermodynamics and information theory. His argument essentially naturalizes purpose. Okay. Showing how goal-directed behavior can arise from purely mechanical systems without requiring a soul or mystical force. Information as negentropy or negentropy? How do we pronounce this one? Negentropy. Is anyone gonna give me a pronunciation here? Negentropy. Negentropy. Okay.
Negentropy.
No, I was so wrong. Negentropy? There's no way.
Negentropy.
That was probably the same one. Although I'm not sure what the word. Okay. Maybe that's it. I'm not sure. Correctly.
Looking at interesting negentropy.
Yo, I was not expecting that one. Negentropy. I'm gonna go with that one from now on. Negentropy. Bridges physics and behavior by redefining information as a physical quantity. Okay. Everything tends towards entropy. Matter usually degrades into chaos. The solution, feedback. That certain organizations of matter. Okay, so this is... I think this is like a general principle that underlies all that we discuss. Information measures its degree of organization. Okay. Yep. This is all right. Purposefully. Okay, never mind. So purpose now is referring to something that's much more innate. Not because it has a conscious will, but because it has a physical structure that allows it to adjust. So purpose is a little, not disingenuous. It's just deceptive here, because it's not that, like, I wouldn't say that the brain acts purposefully. It's just the brain acts, and yeah, it's like a, like the DNA has the instructions. That's really it. That's really it. Everyone's just following rules. It's just kind of happening. Things are just kind of happening. All right, fidelity comparison is the ancestor of modern theories. While revolutionary, it is generally lower fidelity than current models like allostasis or active inference, because it is primarily reactive rather than generative. Interesting. So the first wave, so we got error correction, reactive. We got error prediction, generative. measures error after it occurs, deviation from a set point, and acts to reduce it. So if we're only just doing that, then yeah, we're missing a lot of the story. But predictions need to happen before they arise. Oh, predicts needs before they arise, right? To prevent error from occurring, right? But yeah, this is just a higher complexity version of this, where the base state is prediction, and it is still measuring errors like after they occur, except the errors are kind of predicted as well, interestingly enough. All right, a fixed set point defined by the system's design, a flexible generative model of the world that minimizes free energy. Focuses on input-output relationships. The internal mind can be a simple mechanical governor. Models the structure of the agent's beliefs, priors, and hierarchical predictions about the world. Okay, so yeah, I don't think we would want to jump on this just because we've got better tools for the job here. We got quite modern tools for this job. But yeah, this is definitely along the lines of what we're trying to quote unquote push here, in the sense that this is how we see what's happening. This is how I'm trying to communicate what's happening. Okay, we got to read Dharma Dom's book on stream. We could probably start from the beginning there, and run through that as a daily thing. April themed thinking. We want to do a read through of conceptualizing our understanding. This is tricky because this leaves now like a 4-month gap between our previous read through. So maybe we do that sooner. But here we want to talk about rational thought, logic, etc. This is where I want to put out the video. Rationality is emotional. This is going to be controversial, but it's going to be fun. It's kind of the stuff we've already talked about, like the Damasio's somatic marker hypothesis, how our thinking, our rational thought, is literally afforded to us by our what we would usually describe as irrational or emotional. So when we're making decisions, we're making those based off of emotions that are arising as we're making that type of decision, or as we're considering the options, consciously or unconsciously. Then we need a discussion about what is a good reason. This is going to be kind of cool, a little controversial as well. I don't need to keep all these controversial things here. Discuss what it means for a reason to be good pragmatically. So this is where we have to point out that there isn't some like global absolute judgment of what a good reason is. A good reason, if the goal of a reason is to convince, then that's the goal. Like that's the criteria. It's like, how compelling is your reason? That's what a good reason might be. But then the other thing that we're talking about here is that a good reason doesn't mean that it's necessarily, I think, yeah, I wrote this stuff down somewhere else, but a good reason doesn't necessarily mean that it's exhaustive. Like, there are good reasons for things that you might just not realize have also good counter reasons or counter arguments that make sense of it. Good reason almost, yeah, once again, it's something that people see and infer, like, that sounds like a good reason. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's... And the other thing is, there could be good reasons for something that you don't agree with, like the conclusion you don't agree with. Like, there's good reasons for, I'm not going to come up with anything, but for something where it's like, I really don't want this to be the case, but there is at least a good reason. But yeah, when we talk about reason, usually we think, the reason is exhaustive. Like, there's a good reason why this thing is the case, and you think reason then is like the entire argument rather than just a reason. So yeah, we have to consider all these different ways that we can think about reasons, and once again on this channel, we're going to be challenging the way people think about the way we use words, pointing out that this is highly pragmatic. This is where we can do our language model deep dive. I should do a video, right? How to use LLMs for thinking. This is going to be controversial inherently, but hopefully we do a good job with this one. And really, this video is going to be a lot about how to not use LLMs for thinking. Pitfalls with LLMs. That's what we should really cover. We need to make sure that this isn't overly controversial. We're trying to make controversial topics and make them not controversial. Did I see your message? Which one? Oh, I didn't. Oh, it got cut. Is this theory by Jeffrey Allen Gray included in the document? If not, do you believe it will be relevant for the document? Let us see. Gray's biopsychological theory of personality is a model of the general biological processes relevant for human psychology, behavior, and personality proposed by that. Yep, the theory is well supported by subsequent research and has general acceptance among professionals. Hypothesize the existence of 3 brain systems for controlling a person's interactions with their environment: the behavioral inhibition system, the behavioral activation system, and the fight, flight, or freezing system. Is related to sensitivity to punishment and avoidance motivation. BAS is associated with sensitivity to reward and approach motivation. FFS is associated with sensitivity to fear and how an individual responds to it. What do we have? We have to reward and approach, punishment and avoidance, and fear and how we respond to it. Sensitivity to fear. There's evidence that these inhibition and activation system are connected to mood control, with positive and negative emotions occurring when rewarded or punished. Those with a relatively high BAS are said to be extroverted. Okay, so this is stuff that we would want to talk about, specifically with regard to the context of you, because now this is taking the stuff that we've kind of talked about and implied in part 1. Like, we talk about reward, and we talk about prediction error, and we talk about those in a very affective way in part 1. But we don't go deep into how different people might be experiencing these things differently. So I think that is something that, neuroticism, boom. This is something we are talking about here. So psychological scales have been designed to measure these hypothesized systems and study individual differences in personality. Is positively correlated with BIS scales and negatively correlated with BAS scales. So yeah, the question is going to be how important is this theory today, and is it appropriate to include in the discussion? And perhaps, yeah. The recommendations have been valuable, both for discussion and hopefully for the actual research. We will make sure to get all this stuff in there that needs to be in there, no matter how long it takes. Hopefully, along the way, we just keep finding really cool things to talk about, and hopefully, we keep learning stuff. I'm sure I will keep learning stuff, at least. Hopefully other people learn something as well. Comparison of biological theories of personality. Okay, what was this one? asyncs. Asyncs, biology-based top-down theory of personality, bottom-up. So the big five is I know pretty popular today. So I'm curious if these are mutually exclusive or if they're, I don't know. We'll cover that. We'll cover that in the month of January. No, next month, right? We'll cover that next month. Yeah. What else do we have going on here? Did I have a document here? No. All right. Well, oh, okay. I was following this one. Pragmatic need to brainstorm and iterate. So this is going to be touching on what I usually talk about with like linguistic pragmatism and iterating through potential ways we can think about things. This is why when someone asks me a question that I think has a lot of ambiguity to it, I try to answer it in different ways. That's just a thing I try to do. Like, it's not necessarily like a correct way of going about it. I just think it's a beneficial way, and that's something we could talk about here, to brainstorm different ways to think about things and to iterate through those. This is where we could probably read through more of Less Wrong in the thinking section. That's kind of what they're all about. Probably will give us some ideas. May, determining where to go. This is specifically referring to so identifying what to pursue. We've got making sense of the moment, deliberate reflection and thinking. This is where we start getting into actually, like, this is the identifying identifying what to pursue, identifying and achieving our goals, or identifying and pursuing our goals. This is where we identify what to pursue. And then, so determining where to go, this is where we have to consider, like, this is where we do some consideration of our values, what we actually want, interests, possibilities. Yeah, possibilities is huge, what we can do. Emphasize clarifying what truly matters in context. Okay. Creativity here, it's the generative part of reflection. So this is going to be more about creativity, and this is the brainstorming part about, yeah. Wow, I've got both of these right there. Self-identity and volition. Explain how directed exercises help construct a coherent personal narrative. All right. So this is a little half-baked right now, but we'll figure that one out. That's going to be June. July, we've got framing. So this is framing's what we got here. I think June might be, oh no, I'm sorry, May was what I was talking about. Then we've got June, which is the art and science of goal setting. This is the culmination of the section. Once you have insights from reflection, how do you translate them into actual targets? Discuss why well-defined goals work and the science behind effective goal setting. All right, so we got all these things about goal setting. We want also the pitfalls, potential traps of goal setting, which I forget, it might have been Dharmadam who brought this up last week or 2 weeks ago. Okay, connect this back to values. Ensuring goals are meaningful and relevant enhances commitment and intrinsic motivation. Setting a meaningful trajectory, prioritization and trade-offs, determining what's most important and necessary, all that stuff. All right, then we get to the major section, pursuing goals effectively. And this is where framing is a huge deal. Setting the mindset. Immediately follow this by introducing framework. Position this as the crucial first step in execution. Establishing the right mental framework is foundational for resilience and navigating the challenges ahead. How you frame the journey mentally sets the stage for everything else. Framing, deliberately applying a bias to yourself. That's kind of what framing is. Willpower, rationale. There are ways to strategically frame the situation in order to reduce the willpower necessary to continue. It's kind of a generalized idea. We'll have to go deeper into this. There's always a chance that when we go into these topics, we need to move things around because they just don't make sense in the order that we gave them. So yeah, framing. Then we've got learning. This is all the stuff about learning, knowledge acquisition, willpower, rationale, building a clear understanding of the problem or goal will allow for a more optimal path. Detail the science of effective learning, blah, blah, blah. Learning about oneself. This is where we can actually talk about how to keep track and pay attention to our own trajectory. This is a setup for considering which habits we want to break in the following section. All right, well, then we get the habit and routine. I know we already talked about habit, but I think we only want to bring up habits here just for ourselves, just so that we can see how habits are affecting these biases. But really, we're going to get into habits and how to build habits and how to break habits later on in part 2 and later on in the year. September, habit and routine. So all the stuff here. How to actually make ourselves do the thing. That's the idea. So I have this willpower rationale thing going, and I think this was a response. Like, this was a language model saying this, but it was a response to me pointing out that, like, we're trying to make the goal is to make it as easy as possible to actually pursue your goals. And so the question is, how do you do this such that you don't have to exert a lot of discipline or willpower? Like, what's the way to get there in a really strategic way? So building a habit is a highly strategic tool to offset the difficulty of just brute effort. So yeah, we need to talk about that here. Routines, huge. You know, if anyone's had a routine before, like going to the gym, they would recognize that being able to do a certain amount of absolute work, whether that's like doing the day of the gym, is so much easier when you're in the routine, and like relatively speaking, relatively feeling, it doesn't feel like a significant exertion. However, if you haven't gone to the gym and you're considering this prospect of going to the gym, it's going to feel terrible. It's going to feel like such a big mountain to overcome. And it is. So that's why the question is then, how do you get from 0 to habit? And that's kind of the goal here. Habits of thought. Breaking habits. This is going to be we have to talk about addiction. Like, the entire topic of addiction we have to talk about within this habit and routine section. Huge stuff. So we'll just need to be looking out for that. We need to be ready for that. Acquiring skills. I don't know where we want to put this acquiring skills. It's different than learning, but maybe it's not. Maybe we do learning and skill and acquiring skills. Like, perhaps we do yeah, for here it's like so like, imagine like a motor skill, imagine you want to learn how to do a backflip off of a diving board. Like, what is actually necessary for you to do? And we need that somewhere. And I'm guessing learning is probably usually learning. I was thinking it would be just knowledge or like just understanding in some sense, but yeah, maybe this is fine. And maybe we switch these around. Maybe it's better to do habit and routine first before we do learning, because then we can see learning as some sort of building habit, a habit of thinking, as I would like to do, generally. Yeah, either that or we go the other way around. I'm not sure. WRT willpower. I don't know what WRT means, but willpower. There's also the much more atomic go no go theory in psychology. Oh, with respect to let's look at this. Am I signed in? No. Can you walk me through the centers on how people control their impulses? Go trials, you're supposed to respond quickly. No go trials, you're supposed to withhold that response. Researchers study response inhibition impulse. Okay, so yeah, this is definitely something we want to put in here. On here, right? So this is like this is almost like this is a measure, right? The go pathway generates a motor command, and a no-go stimulus triggers a top-down inhibitory process that suppresses that command. All right, so regardless, I think we're going to have to go into this. This is going to be go, no-go, theory in psychology. The test is to push a button given one stimulus, except when a second stimulus presents. Or does go no go belong more properly under volition? I think it would go under. I think it would go under here because the no go is volition specifically relating to not doing something. So it's pushing back against an automatic bias, which is what we want to discuss here. I think the game Simon Says is technically a go no go test. Nice. Do what the coach says only if prefaced by Simon Says. Right. Negative volition given a planned action. I remember when I was a kid, I forget what I was even at. I don't even remember what the context of this thing was, but there was a guy on stage and he was offering a prize for anyone who could come up and tell the story about what they did that day without saying or without like pausing. I don't know if like was allowed because people do add like all the time. I say all the time. I've been saying all the time this stream. So I would have failed that, but that would have been an interesting one. I could do that. Nice. But like it was fun to watch people fail that. Like even when so I guess I just used like there as an and it it's a tricky thing because it requires a lot of volition regarding not like the inhibition, but then also you have to think about the day. Like you have to access memory in such a way where you have to do both of these things at the same time. That's a great challenge. Yo, Darwinom, what's good? I would just write talking like Donald Trump, making bombastic claims, overly egotistic. That would be great if you just lied the entire time in order to not have to think about anything. What is goody? We're planning out the next month. Darwinom, is March? I think I mentioned this before. Is March a good time for meditation? Meditation month. For example, nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. Nice. I saw something I wanted to tell you. Nice. I'm excited. No, not lying, just exaggerating. Okay, to such a degree that the audience goes, wait, really? What? That's a Trump quote. Oh my gosh. Oh, right. I do remember. It can only good happen. Right, right. Podcast with Sam Harris and two monks, and they called him His Holiness. What? That's so funny. Was it a new podcast? Because I would love to watch a new Sam podcast. The doctors said they've never seen a body kill the coronavirus like my body. They tested my DNA and it wasn't DNA, it was USA. Very nice. Classic. I can link. Oh, nice. Yeah, I would appreciate that as well. I might even cheat and watch it sooner than March. Thank you. All right. 4 days ago. That's exciting. Okay. Let me, I just gotta get in my watch later here. Oh, am I trolling? What's happening here? Oh, I am trolling. Okay. That quote is fake, but the fact that you have to check is hilarious. Which quote? Didn't the one that you said, wasn't that one real? He's basically a Buddhist, but that the knowledge of the Buddha doesn't belong to Buddhism, and he likes being secular. Oh, he said he's basically a Buddhist, but that the knowledge of the Buddha doesn't belong to Buddhism, and he likes being secular. Wow. The USA one. I could have sworn that was a real quote. Also talked about studying with Dzogchen guys, and he was having the experience that the master was a perfect Buddha. Nice. That's really cool. Yeah, we got to go deep into Sam stuff as well during meditation month. I can't tell if you're criticizing this video or not. Just some things that happened in it. Yeah, I am like, I don't think I align with every single view that Sam Harris has, but it is always such a fresh what's the phrase? A breath of fresh air listening to him speak. Just the way his mind works, and he just reasons through things in a very like often like blunt and dry way, but you know, he also has that level of like he can go from reserve to attack at any point if he like needs to. All right. What do we got next? Then we've got habit. Okay, habit and routine was that. Then we got October, acquiring skills. So we put that. Okay, learning and acquiring skills. We put that all in the same month. So now we can go October, the social environment. Is that what was next? Leveraging the social environment. So this is where we have to talk about the power of accountability, mentorship, surrounding yourself with the right people, and potentially effective communication, leveraging relationships, social norms, effective behaviors, empathy. Oh, empathy is huge here. Effective communication, reasoning. Explain the profound impact of having an accountability, blah, 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 surrounding yourself. Okay, all these things are the same. There's stuff like lower in this document that probably add more to this. This is just general ideas. But we could do a whole thing here. I want to have a video on laughter. I'm sure someone's done this before, but we got to go. We got to do it in a way that has like a philosophical spin. like a lot of things can be funny. I think that's another thing we have to talk about. The question is like whether, like, what are we really trying to do with what we're talking about? What is funny and what's not funny, and etc. Okay, critique of loyalty. This is a huge one that I think is going to be also controversial. There's a rational case to be made that the ends, being able to think freely, justify limiting loyalty. And this is obviously like part of the social environment situation where being loyal to people, such that especially as a content creator, such that you have like a responsibility to not speak out when they say or do something that's terrible, is a problem for the way that you like the trajectory of your own thinking. So we have to be clear here about this is kind of going to be a this is going to be like a case for all content creators, but also for just people that have influence or power in any regard, that we have to be careful about these types of things. But I also have to do more research in this stuff, like so I want to connect. So I keep hearing, I think it was Jordan Peterson who kept saying that like the betrayal was like one of the lowest sins, and I'm wondering if that's because it has such visceral feelings, like that maybe there's something visceral about that, being like the experience of having been betrayed, and so perhaps that's something to consider also. Like that would actually make this a lot more difficult of a topic, and I think that's worth considering. So that's all happening there. We're going to come up with more stuff as well. I'm loyal to Comrade Generalismo, dear leader, chairman Stan Rich. Oh no. He lights the path for the revolutionary thought. Reddin's. Oh no. What is going on here? People are going to hop in. They're going to think that we're political. Speaking of thinking freely, is Jonathan Haidt's moral foundations theory discussed in the document? I ask because I believe being self-conscious of moral biases can help us understand the value of free thought and free speech so we can correct our biases. I think that's a topic for part 3, and it will need to be discussed. So let me just throw that there. I don't know if we might even have it already in here, but worst case, we have it twice. So all right, and I'm also gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna steal your quote here. Just to help us out when I see this again. Being self-conscious of moral biases can help us understand the value of free thought and free speech so we can correct our biases. So let me see. Free thought. So when we talk about free thought and free speech, we can't, this isn't like a political discussion. It's most fundamentally like freedom of thought, really. But it's also the idea of navigating your social communities and whatnot. Your thought is going to be affected by the people that you are around, what you're exposed to, etc. So it helps us. It's going to be less that it helps us understand the value of. It's going to helps us. Maybe it's the value of navigating thought and speech. Thought, speech, social dynamics, so that we can identify, dodge, and rectify biases. Something like that. I am indeed biased. We all are. I believe free speech should be protected at a political level. No, I mean, fair enough, and I think for good reason. Just yeah, for this document, it's just not in the scope. But yeah, as a person, I would certainly. I mean, I think that the document implies that position as well. I think the ability to for people to think in a free way. But that said, I think this document also kind of implies that we need to really consider what mechanism should we actually operate under in the 21st century. Like obviously we want free speech at some level, but we really need to be careful about what's happening in social media, like what an algorithm can do. Like that's a huge deal for free speech. Like free speech is essentially like the foundation of what we want out of free speech is being assaulted by algorithms. So even though we might think that anything should go on a platform, in the same vein, the fact that there is an algorithm that's pushing us towards certain exposure is actually quite problematic, and should be not should be, but perhaps could be an assault against the fundamental thing that we're actually looking for with free speech. So free speech absolutism is paradoxical because of the paradox of tolerance. Right, yeah, there's also we could go down that road as well, where we do have all kinds of issues with that. But I think like those types of issues are less important to discuss, at least right now, than like algorithm problems. I think those are huge. Do you believe being self-conscious of the cognitive biases discovered by Dan Ariely is relevant? Let's see. Let's do Gemini. I think Gemini is one out. I don't know if anyone's seen the whole Gemini 3 stuff, but apparently it's pretty good. So can you just explain the cognitive biases discovered by Dan Ariely? If they're there, then we should throw them in the biases section. Internal obstacles. And yeah, what were we at here? Do we finish? Oh no, I've lost the plot. We were down to thinking, we were down to social environment. Okay, so then I just had the next one after that was the full picture. And I just have that as 1 month, but perhaps we make this something else. Also, now that we have an extra month, maybe we squeeze in after the meditation month a full month for the other support system stuff, like emotional regulation, which I think will be a lot of stuff. Not just sleep, nutrition, exercise, stress management, right? Relaxation, social relationships, sunlight, etc. Like there's gonna be a lot also in things we can do to just manage and regulate emotions. Things like therapy should be in here also, like all kinds of stuff. All the things that therapy walk you through, we would want in here, just so that people could start thinking about these things themselves before a therapist tells them they can do it. All right, we've got a video. No, we've got a what is going on here? I don't watch TV. I'm not going to let the mainstream media tell me how to think. You let recommendation watch next serve determine your whole personality. Is this what an algorithm looks like? Chicken fried rice. Yeah, I guess there's something a little disgusting or a little more disgusting for me about like, TV ads than like an algorithm pushing me towards, things that are quite benign. Um, but that said, I'm probably not even aware of how algorithms have pushed me towards ways of thinking that I may or may not have wanted to go down just because it's stimulating. Also, yeah, I guess there's the other problem of just taking up my time, but I mean that's less in this topic that we were discussing. Yep, it must be. All right, we've got a prominent behavioral economist has spent his career demonstrating that human irrationality is not random; it is systematic and predictable. We've talked about this, right? Didn't we already talk through this? Standard economic model, right? The decoy. Okay, here are the key cognitive biases. The decoy effect occurs when people's preference for one of two options changes when a third, similar but less attractive option is presented. Yes, so it is cool to think about these things. I'm curious if they need to be included, but they probably should be included. I think we should just out of the decoy effect, the zero price effect. That free is not just a price, it is an emotional trigger, right? When something costs zero, we don't just see it as a good deal, we irrationally overvalue it, right? Often ignoring the hidden costs. Yes. These are like less. These are less like fundamental. This is like these are kind of similar to the things that we see in what is it? Thinking Fast and Slow. Is that what that? Yeah, Thinking Fast and Slow. I remember this book having these types of biases in it, and yeah, while these are cool, they're not like as pervasive in our lives. I mean, it's very actually important to consider how this is the case. How we aren't just rational thinkers always. We are most fundamentally emotional thinkers, and then we conceptualize ourselves as rational thinkers. The IKEA effect. Right, okay. How people place a disproportionately high value on products they partially created themselves. This is important because we can leverage this. This is why, partly why, when we deliberately plan to do something and then we do it, we can take ownership of having done that thing, and it feels a certain way. Like it feels to ownership in like a a more sentimental way than just simply like a property of that was my action. It's like that was my baby. I just did that. I made that. I let others curate the content feeds for me. Oh, nice. I watch a very funny streamer whose audience send her wildly funny and bizarre TikToks. They spend the time looking for it, and the rest of us profit algo free. Very cool. Like the stag's head you put above your mantle. Oh, is that referring to what I just said? Or is that... I don't remember what I just said like 20 seconds ago. Oh, the IKEA effect, right? Okay, the stag head you put above. I see. The DIY payoff, right? Yeah. The fudge factor, dishonesty. On cheating fundamentally changed how we understand dishonesty. He found that very few people are big cheaters, criminals. Instead, almost everyone cheats a little bit, just enough to gain an advantage, but not enough to damage their self-image as a good person. Wow. And self-image, like your own vision of yourself as good. not like your self-image outwardly. It's like you have to believe that yourself, you have to believe that you are a good person and that you are operating in a fine way when you do cheat a little bit. So, but it comes down to like cheats now becomes this ambiguous idea. It's like, what does cheating mean? You know, like what is, you know, if I jaywalk, I'm technically cheating the system. I'm doing something that's illegal, but I'm not gonna get total self-report from Ariely. That's so funny. We all just act as if no one actually does this. This is just it's just something he does. Participants were given a math test and paid for every correct answer. In the control group, they handed their papers to an examiner. In the experimental group, they were told to shred their papers and just tell the examiner how many they got right. Whoa. Everyone cheats a little. In the shredder condition, people claim to solve slightly more problems than the control group. Stakes don't matter. Increasing the monetary reward for cheating did not increase the cheating. In fact, higher stakes sometimes reduced cheating because it was harder to rationalize. Wow, that's really cool. Moral reminder, if participants were asked to recall the 10 commandments or sign an honor code before the test, cheating dropped to 0. Wonderful. That's awesome. Okay, the fudge factor. Why is this called the fudge factor? Fudging, like, I guess fudging, like fudging the truth. This is cool, though. This is something that maybe should come up in, I don't know, part 3. So perhaps something that we want to bring up here is perhaps we don't need to cover all of these biases here, but we should mention that biases can pertain to many different facets of life and aren't necessarily hindrances. ... We will cover these as their respective topics come up. Something silly like that. Now, tell 2 soldiers on opposing sides of a war to kill each other. One succeeds, the survivor spends the rest of their life struggling with, I'm a good person, right? The commandments' effect on cheating. Never heard of this. Yeah, I remember, I mean, there's been all kinds of studies about, you know, giving people words or making people think about certain things and then putting them into a situation. I've heard that people will have, like, by putting a picture of eyes in front of a classroom, it led to less cheating because people thought like they were being watched. You know, there's all kinds of stuff that affects people in ways that they don't realize. And it's kind of crazy that we're at the point where we can start using these facts about our own biology as tools. So it's a little messed up, but a little wild. Ariely cowers at the Catholic cardinal who says 0 after being asked how many he got right after his paper was shredded. That's crazy. Oh, that's it. Yeah, but the thing is, the cardinal didn't get 0 wrong. He just didn't want to covet any of his neighbor's goods, so he didn't want any money. So he just, you know, is there anything about lying in the? I don't think there's. Is lying in the 10 Commandments? I don't think so. So maybe he lied in order to not break the other commandments. No, he did get 0 wrong. He's just not very good at math. You see? Oh, okay. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Oh, yeah? That's probably one, and that is most certainly lying. So, all right, never mind on that one. Okay. Relativity and anchoring. Okay, so this is where framing comes into the picture. argues we rarely make decisions in absolute terms. We don't have an internal value meter that tells us how much things are worth. We rely on comparisons. Okay, I'll just put this as a single one here. Relativity and anchoring. We imprint on the first number we see. In a famous experiment, Ariely asked students to write down the last 2 digits of their social security number. He then asked if they would pay that amount for a bottle of wine. Those with high social security number digits were willing to pay significantly more for the wine than those with low digits. The arbitrary number anchored their perception of value. Wow, that's cool. Relativity. We are happier making 75,000 if our brother-in-law makes 70,000 than we are making 100,000 if he makes 110,000. Our satisfaction is derived from comparison, not objective wealth. Yeah, this is why like relative poverty is such a big deal. Like even though this, you know, even though the US is absolutely wealthy, and I mean that like not in like a, you know, we are so wealthy, but like in an absolute way sense we are wealthy. Like, you know, we don't have to crawl in mines in order to get a little bit amount of money in order to buy bread, and this, you know, we're able to even people who are like worst off, you know, people that we you know tend to care about or empathize with, who have to work all day and all night, can buy a tasty cake, which is like something that I feel like wars would have been fought over at some point in history. Total okay, you're telling me a college student isn't going to buy a $11 bottle of wine? Yeah, I mean that the anchoring thing is insane, honestly. That's a very counterintuitive outcome. Ariely seems to be making 75,000 compared to his brother-in-law 70,000. Right, this is all out of spite. The endowment effect, the Duke ticket study. While the endowment effect, valuing what you own more than what you don't, was identified by others, Ariely provided one of its most vivid demonstrations at Duke University. Duke students have to camp out for weeks to get basketball tickets. A lottery determines who gets them. Wait, they have to camp out for weeks? The experiment, Ariely called students who won tickets and asked what they would sell them for. He also called students who lost and asked them what they would pay to buy one. The gap: buyers were willing to pay around $170, and sellers who had owned the ticket for only a few minutes demanded an average of $2,400. Ownership instantly warped their perspective. They viewed the ticket as a priceless memory, while buyers who saw it as a night out. Wow. I don't know if we could take this conclusion away. They could also just think that because they owned it, like almost in hopeful thinking, they just think it's more valuable, or at least they're like, yeah, they're hoping it's more valuable. But regardless, this is pretty sweet. The endowment effect. We'll have to see if which of these are relevant for this. The obstacles, like we're looking for things that are obstacles here, like, you know, things like what am I thinking of? Confirmation bias, stuff like that. These things are getting in your way of being able to think towards your you know, deliberate aims. Bid ask in a nutshell. One thing that is missing is the realistic prospect of loss / gain of ticket / money. Bid ask, is that a separate cognitive bias? just what someone would bid for versus market makers do bid ask on stock exchanges. Okay, is this how they figure out what people would pay? Okay. Huh, they only did 5. Okay, we got replication crisis. Refers to concerns about the credibility of findings in psychological science. The term, which originated in the early 2010s, denotes that findings in behavioral science often cannot be replicated. Researchers do not obtain results comparable to the original peer-reviewed study when repeating that study using similar procedures. For this reason, many scientists question the accuracy of published findings and now call for an increased scrutiny of research practices in psychology. When was this posted? What led? Some scientists have warned for years that certain ways of collecting, analyzing, and reporting data, often referred to as questionable research practices, making it more likely that results will appear to be statistically meaningful even though they are not. Flawed study designs and a publication bias that favors confirmatory results are other long-time sources of concern. Right, this is like confirmation bias, just at a high stakes context. A series of replication projects in the mid-2010s amplified these worries. In one major project, fewer than half of the students that replicators tried to recreate yielded similar results, suggesting that at least some of the original findings were false positives. Hopefully, meta-analyses get you out of these issues, though. Like that's I think the goal of the meta-analysis, to point out whether or not this could be the case. A variety of findings have come into question following replication attempts, including well-known ones suggesting that certain types of priming, physical poses, and other simple interventions could affect behavior in surprisingly or beneficial ways. Yeah, priming is huge. Interestingly, when I did all the peer grading research, priming was like a serious issue. It's like, you know, if you're trying to get a certain type of response in grading, in peer grading, or in massive online grading, what you give as the prompt that primes them is really important. It is important to note that psychology is not alone, however. Other fields such as cancer research and economics have faced similar questions about methodological rigor. When you buy a security on NASDAQ, for example, you actually buy it from a market maker who quotes a spread of prices, the bid-ask. After the transaction, the market maker transfers the payment to the seller of that security. Okay. I do this all the time, and this guy called Margin keeps calling me any clues. Nice. Got a firstborn. Should solve it for a little while. Could he be my son? It's a mystery. Economics, who would have thought? The only objective science. True. The growing awareness of how research practice can lead to false positives has coincided with extreme instances of willful misrepresentation and falsification, resulting in some cases in the removal or resignation of prominent scientists. Okay. A landmark paper in 2015 revealed that of 97 attempts to replicate previous research findings, fewer than 40% were deemed successful. Another large-scale project in 2010 tested 28 findings dating from the 1970s through 2014. It found evidence for about half. An examination of 21 findings published in top-tier journals found that 2/3 replicated successfully. These results are not necessarily representative of psychology as a whole, however, and certain areas of the field have likely amassed stronger evidence than others. Yeah, that's a huge deal as well. So we do need to be mindful of replication, and also just considering how important replication is in certain fields or facets. Other fields have struggled with reproducibility as well, such as economics and medicine, yet psychology may face distinct challenges. Measuring human behavior can be less precise than measuring, for example, physiological markers such as blood pressure or heart rate, right? And also, it's not just human behavior, but it's sometimes just human report. So measuring human report can be ambiguous as well, or arbitrary. Okay, what findings from psychology have proven to be reliable? Even skeptical scientists still believe in a range of findings about human behavior. Yeah, I think that we shouldn't throw out everything. Shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater here. Okay, p-value, how psychology is moving forward. The replication crisis provoked heated internal debate in the field, with some arguing that it called for an overhaul of psychological science and others maintaining that the crisis was unreal or overblown. Nevertheless, psychologists interested in reform have pressed ahead with efforts to make the claims of psychological research more credible. Okay. Maybe tomorrow we do this. Maybe we just look into this, the replication crisis. Yeah, what do we got? Can you get me the source for this? I remember this but never wrote it down. I've told people about it but never had a citation. Reproducing the 97 studies. Oh, nice. Found the article. It's all good. Estimating the reproducibility of psychological science is one, I believe. All right, let's see if I know this is not always popular, but let's see what Gemini can do in the research mode. Deep research. Can you provide an overview of the, what was it called? The reproducibility crisis in psychology. And explain what the ramifications / fallout has been up until today. So let's see what happens if I just put, I'm curious what the prompt is going to be here. But maybe this is something we read through tomorrow just because this is quite important. And I think we've covered everything that we needed to do in terms of the next year. We've got our next year planned out. So, I don't know. Does this sound like a good year? Basically filling out part 2 of the document, but I don't know if I could promise that it's going to be the actual writing of part 2. It's just going to be the amassing of a significant amount of research and ideas regarding each of the sections. So it's going to be basically building out a substantial outline for what needs to be happening in part 2. And then it might even take longer for us to, like maybe a few more months after that, for us to actually write it down in a way that really works and flows well. But we'll see. I'm not sure. Maybe I can do a lot of piecing together as we go. I just think part 2 is unlike part 1, where we just have so much to cover at every single step of the way, and it's all new stuff, basically, in the sense that I haven't been spending, years reading into a lot of this. I think I have just like a general sense of a lot of these topics, but not in depth. But yeah, if anyone's got any feedback on this plan, please let me know. All right, here's a research plan. If you need updated, let me know. Research the origins and definition of the reproducibility crisis in psychology, specifically focusing on the 2015 Open Science Collaboration article, Estimating the Reproducibility of Psychological Science. Then identify the primary causes attributed to the crisis, such as hacking, publication bias, harking, hypothesizing after results are known, and low statistical power. Investigate specific high-profile psychological studies or theories that fail to replicate, such as ego depletion, power posing, and social priming effects, and note the impact on those specific subfields. Then examine the methodological and institutional reforms implemented in response to the crisis, including the rise of pre-registration, registered reports, and the open science framework. Okay. Search for recent assessments and large-scale replication efforts from 2020 to late 2025 to understand the current state of the field and whether reproducibility rates have improved. Then analyze the broader ramifications of the crisis in the scientific community, including changes in journal editorial policies, tenure and promotional criteria, and public trust in psychological research. Then finally synthesize the gathered information to explain the trajectory of the crisis from its recognition to the present day, highlighting both the fallout and the constructive changes in the description, in the discipline. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to just start this research. I think the plan was good. Speaking of psychology, do you believe psychoanalysis is relevant for the document? I think so. Right? Don't people leverage psychoanalysis today? I think we've got psychoanalysis in here. We've got psychoanalysis. What is this? Priority of... This is just necessary research that I should be doing. Drive between brain and subject. An imminent critique of Lacanian neuropsychoanalysis. Okay. Adrian Johnston is a philosopher who bridges Hegelian dialectics, Lacanian psychoanalysis, and contemporary neuroscience. Okay. Psychoanalytic theory, especially as developed by Lacan, subject is seen as inherently divided or split, never fully complete. So, yeah, we might have to consider all these ideas. What else do we have? Are these all it? Yeah, I guess this is that was it. Oh, we have here conceptualizing our understanding. His work synthesizes Hegelian dialectics, psychoanalysis, and neuroscience to create a materialist philosophy of the subject. I don't know if we're going to want this type of discussion here, but maybe. So yeah, I probably have to... Oh, we got Zizek also talking about Lacanian psychoanalysis. Was psychoanalysis always Lacan? Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff I need to be reading and writing in the next, like, I don't know, 5 years. It's famously started with Freud. Okay. So perhaps I should be looking at that. I'm sure I'm like, I'm sure I'll see what's going on. Freud was a freak for real. I'm sure I'll see like the tangential topics when I look into psychoanalysis. Maybe we do a psychoanalysis day. I'm not sure. I know, AI is frowned upon, but these deep research things, I think, do point you in great directions at least. So when we're like jumping into a topic, I think it's beneficial to like leverage this to just kind of see the scope of a field, and then we can make sure that what we're looking at in terms of the data or the sources are actually what we're looking for or what we actually want. But it's also so nice that it gives us these references, which is nice. Also, the uncle of the grandfather of modern advertising, Edward Bernays. The uncle of the grandfather of modern advertising. That was vague. Literally, the uncle or granduncle of Edward Bernays, who invented modern emotional appeal advertising. Wow. And oh, are you saying that was Freud? Freud was the uncle? Or are you saying that... Because that's kind of wild. Maybe I'm curious if Freud had any hand in that, just from discussions. Maybe Thanksgiving dinner, they're talking about Freud was his uncle. Nice. They were just talking about influence and emotions and stuff. Torches of Freedom got millions of women to smoke. Oh, was that that was an ad? Torches of Freedom ad. TWA 1929 public relations campaign. What are we looking at here in terms of equated smoking in public with female emancipation? Wow. Very nice. Some women had been smoking decades earlier, but usually in private. This cartoon from Germany illustrates the notion that smoking was considered unfeminine by some in that period. Okay, but then we get the ad. Wow. But then... Oh, the Torches of Freedom idea saw a resurgence in the 1990s far beyond the borders of America, where tobacco advertising was now becoming increasingly restricted. As they sought to expand their markets around the world, such... Okay. So where does... so this was just a phrase, early 20th century. And then it was picked back up. Wow. Wow, they were using it in different areas in Spain. Yeesh. Okay. Notorious. Bring this document up at Thanksgiving dinner. They then refuse to elaborate. Okay. Will do. Wealthy socialites paid to board a float and smoke on it during a parade. Oh, nice. That's crazy. Some of my family knows about what I'm doing on the side, like very vaguely though. Like they don't, like they're always asking about what platform I'm on and stuff like that. So it certainly wouldn't be a Thanksgiving dinner topic. But I'm sure that if this thing were to actually blow up, they would get more interested in, because, you know, before something gets popular, it's always like, you know, there's a small possibility that this person's a, you know, just straight up insane, or just like in the weeds or in the rabbit hole of some obscure way of thinking. Like, man, if I got taken by the what was that cult called? Our very own boy, Embrace Primalism. He's, yeah, what's that group called that he's been trying to get us to join? Like, if I bought into that and that's what came out of what I'm doing here, then yeah, I think my Davidian, not Branch Davidian. I'm not sure. I don't think so. No, it's like, it's a modern thing. It's like oh, I forgot. I think I knew this guy's name. I'm not sure. I've searched for it, but it's someone that's like today acting, and it's something about early Greek ways of thinking mixed with psychedelics. I don't know. Hillman. That's the guy's name. Yeah. What's the first name? It's Hillman. Greeks. Ammon Hillman. There we go. The Chemical Muse. Right. This is what we read. It sounds mostly like a kook. You can begin by looking at where he publishes. Are they respected academic presses? I don't know if respected publishers can be expected to publish anything but what sells. All right, when we have like the topic that we're going to discuss tomorrow, the epistemic reckoning, a comprehensive analysis of the reproducibility crisis in psychological science. We can't become complete pessimists about science. Like the underlying premises are still sound. It's just this is an issue with a subset of incentives and procedure, and ideally we create the procedure so that even though the incentives that are there, they can't break through, and then also we want to somehow change the incentives so that that there can't be any type of leaking in from the procedure. And this is what we saw. We read this a little while back. I must forefront all of this with a warning. Because I have to assess the value of what Hillman says, and what he says is gross, I'm going to have to quote and discuss some graphic and gratuitous sexual content. If that's not kosher to you, you can skip this article and all content ever generated by Ammon. And count yourself lucky. Everyone else trudge on. Since Hillman won't debate me, I will debate his empty chair. That's funny. Out of curiosity, how much longer will you be live streaming today? Probably not much longer. I think I'll probably call it soon. We've got our setup. I think we did everything I wanted to do today, which was go through the year plan, the next year's plan. We'll come up with more fun video ideas to happen in between these. And we'll see what other things I can cook up and manage in my time. Let's see if we can build the channel such that, maybe I can entertain the idea of making the risky jump towards working on this stuff all day, every day. And, we'll take it from there. But a lot to do. Whatever happened to that evolution blog that started with the banger line? The evolution blog that started with the banger line. Was this part of the what is it called? Less Wrong? Did I do Less Wrong here? Was this part of Less Wrong? Is that what we're referring to? Or was there a different blog? Found it. Oh, okay. Here we go. Hell yeah. Well, we should have Evolution Month, actually. That's what I'm forgetting. Should we have Evolution Month earlier in the month? Or earlier in the year? Why evolution is true. This is, I remember. Okay, here's another philosopher who's wrecked himself on the shoals of reason and logic when trying to deal with consciousness. Not all philosophers screw up when discussing issues of neuroscience, of course. But so often, many of them simply look ridiculous, at least to scientists, when they tell us what could be true and what cannot be true. Today's article by a philosopher who maintains that consciousness could not have evolved is a prime example. The nescience is on view in an article from that's wrong in almost every way that it could be. In other words, it's not even wrong. The author, Kastrup, is identified. Oh, so this was an anti-Kastrup article? Oh, man. Kastrup's thesis is that consciousness could not have evolved. His alternative view of why it exists seems to be panpsychism. Consciousness was always there as a fact of nature. but I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's Kastrup's train of logic from the article. Evolution is a materialistic process. The salient characteristic of materialism is that all entities are defined and exhaustively characterized in purely quantitative terms. Consciousness cannot be characterized in quantitative terms. It is a qualitative and subjective property manifested by qualia, the sensations that inhere in consciousness, like what it is like to see red or what it feels like to hear. Vivaldi Sonata. A Vivaldi Sonata. Ergo, consciousness is not explainable by materialism. Materialism must therefore not be a universal explanatory schema for understanding nature. As Kastrup says, our very sentience contradicts materialism. All right, we can't rehash our consciousness discussion, but yeah. Oh, I was expecting this to be much longer. Oh, I've already refuted this. So they go through each of these and they just... Yep, evolution is a materialistic process, though I prefer the word naturalistic. Nice, because material implies stuff. And lots of nature, like gravity, isn't stuff. That's really cool. Who is this guy? What's going on here? Who's writing this? Oh, is this all the same person in this site? Can we email? Okay, my final question for you during today is, what is the document's perspective on disagreement between psychologism and anti-psychologism in logic? I don't know. What would be this? Okay. Yeah. How do we find more things from this person? Are all these the same person? So long as a Democrat. Oh my gosh, this is a political commentary guy as well. Recent post. It was a hungry squirrel. Very recent. Today. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. Given what readers know of me, the most common answers... Oh no. Answers were bit by a duck and bit by a squirrel. It turns out the latter answer is correct. Ducks can't really bite, at least not hard enough to break skin. What is going on here? What kind of blog is this? What happened to me? Oh, I see. Okay, this was the... When was that? That was yesterday? No way. This person is... Oh man, why am I clicking on all these? This person is pumping out content constantly. Why evolution is true. This is so interesting. Select, yeah, let's go to the archive. Easter snow. This is a lot of stuff to be writing in every single day. We got to figure out what's going on here. Oh, about the author on the right. I am blind. Okay. Let's read that in a second. My favorite example of scientific introspection was when those Harvard guys thought they had proof of the instant the Big Bang occurred, made headlines up for Nobel Prize in physics. They were wrong, but the important thing is we found out why. Their formulations were good. They just made a mistake with respect to cosmic dust or gases. If we can correct for that someday, we'll have our answer. Nice. Nelson Goodman goes into detail about qualia in the structure of appearance, big influence on use of formal logic in math and cognitive science. Nelson Goodman. Okay, I'm curious if this is a when is Nelson Goodman? Is this like a recent account? Oh, okay, I'm a little concerned by this, but Chomsky's program. Philosophers try not to make the most obscure argument you've ever heard. Challenge impossible. About the author on the right. Yeah, no, thank you for pointing that out. Readers, wildlife photos. How many readers does it, I think this is right. I think this is like literally 30K subscribers. I think this person is built a following over just years of being on point. And when I say that, I mean like writing a lot. Jerry A. Coyne. Do we know this person? I mentioned him here a couple times. Co-published with WVO Quine. Yeah, I guess I don't know anything about this person at all. Emeritus professor in the Department of Ecology and Evolution at the University of Chicago. Was a member, blah, 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 blah. Received BS, PhD, evolutionary biology. Work was focused on understanding the origins of species, the evolutionary process that produces discrete groups in nature. To do that, he used a variety of genetic analyses to locate and identify the genes that produce reproductive barriers between distinct species of the fruit fly, blah, blah, blah. He helped elucidate the evolutionary processes that originally produced genetic change and investigated whether different pairs of species showed similar genetic patterns, implying similar routes to speciation. Has written 125 refereed scientific papers and 180 other articles, book reviews, and columns. Oh, wow. His two popular books are Why Evolution is True and Faith versus Fact. Why Science and Religion are Incompatible. Depends what you... Yeah, it depends what we mean by religion and faith. Okay. All right. Pretty cool stuff. No, I don't. It was just for dramatic effect. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who Quine is either. Christ will finally find him eventually. Yes. So for the quality of stuff, I imagine that people have taken what Goodman's probably written and incorporated that into more holistic accounts of qualia, which I think we can just consider to be aspects of our experience. So like connecting phenomenology with actual neuroscience and considering how different parts of the brain create different aspects of our experience, which is what people are doing today. The other thing is people are pointing out that it's like we're not even experiencing like present state in a sense. We're like experiencing like our body and brain's prediction of the state. Like it's always a generated prediction of what's happening. It's never like a representation. So that's another tricky thing that probably wasn't fleshed out by the time of Goodman. Christ will find him eventually. I am going to read the answer. Haven't followed it up. He didn't invent the term qualia, but he talks about its origin. Oh, I see. That's cool. All right. We need to flag this. I'm just going to keep that there. Based on the contents, the framework would likely take a compatibilist and pragmatic stance regarding the disagreement between psychologism, logic as a description of mental processes, and anti-psychologism, logic as objective, mind-independent truth. All right, so as a description of mental processes. I don't know if I would take either of these. So we're definitely not taking this one. We're not taking anti-psychologism, logic as objective, mind-independent truth. And I don't know if we could take this one. Reject a hard dualism between the two, arguing instead that logical laws are biologically grounded in their origin, but functionally objective in their normative application through social coherence. So the document is deeply rooted in materialism and neuroscience, viewing all experience as the result of physical processes. It would argue that what we call logic is fundamentally a biological function of the brain, specifically related to predictive processing. But that's not to think that like what we're doing is like the rules of logic that we put on paper and conceptualize. It's not like we're thinking in in perfectly logical ways like we do when we write the rules of math. Like that's not how we think. Logic is error minimization. The document defines rationality not as an abstract ideal, but as a natural and emotional process, right? So we say a sophisticated sensor for and resolver of incoherence, but we could think of that as reducing free energy. We could think about that as homeostasis, allostasis, active inference. Like this is just a process that's happening that's leading us to states of action and readiness with regard to what we're dealing with in the world. Now that's so far away from what we like think about when we think about logic. So that's why it's difficult to talk about these things. But at base level, that's all that's going on. And then we can start conceptualizing things that are logical and coming up with logical rules that really what's happening with logical rules is we internalize them and that affects how we think, but it's not that we then think perfectly logically. It's just that in theory we think in ways that are pragmatically similar to what we think about when we see the logic written on paper. So logic is like a standard of norms. So that's why when I say something, you might say, "Oh, that sounds logical," and that comes down to whatever learning you've had in your life. It's pragmatically similar enough to the learning I've had, such that when I say something and it sounds logical to you, that like our cultures were similar enough such that could be the case. And a lot of our logic revolves around the contents of what we're saying. And what I'm saying is in a language, like it's in English. The meanings of each word are contextual and very much contingent on where we're at right now. So yeah, that sounds logical. Thank you very much. So right. Yeah, I'm trying to my goal is always to communicate things in ways that sound logical, like that to the audience it feels logical, right? I don't think that I'm like operating in some like perfect logical sense. And it's really important that when we get to the thinking section of part 2 or the thinking month that we study the rules of good logical reasoning, so that it affects how I communicate things in the future. It affects how I can manage arguments against the stuff that we say, or the arguments that I make against the stuff that we might be saying as well. It's important that we can navigate and think through these things for our own sake. The feeling of validity, the sense that a logical proposition is true or valid, is identified as a feeling of certainty, which is a neurochemical event mediated by dopamine, signifying a successful prediction. So once again, I'm talking about this through predictive processing. We could talk about this through homeostasis as well. It's it's hard to consider what that feeling is doing for us in a big picture sense. But we can still consider that the experience that we have when we see something as determinately true, or this is determinately a pen, like that feeling that we have, or that lack of a feeling, because a lot of times it's the lack of some negative emotion, or a lack of neuroadrenaline or norepinephrine that is making it feel like we're fine, like this is true. You know, I can't make myself think something that's false about this object in front of me without it feeling like, without myself getting cognitive dissonance. So this sounds less like logic, more like persuasion. Right. So I'm pointing out that what sounds logical, what feels logical, is inherently something felt, something that is internalized. But what we can identify is like rules of logic, where we could write down, we're trying to conceptualize the norms that we've already, like, so like if I was, you know, in a Jordan Peterson way, we're trying to write down the rules of what we've already been acting out. That's like the, you know, that's like rules to moral norms. This is like you know, we're trying to write down and conceptualize logical rules to, you know, our what we usually act out. But the issue is, like, it's not always clear what is logically coherent and what is a non sequitur. So, like, that's up to the subjective view as to whether one of those things is the case. Is this actually logical, or is this illogical? That's not, like, even though the rules of logic are like they're there, it doesn't allow us to find things that are absolutely logical in the world. Like, it's hard to do that. But that's why it's really important to really notice that what feels logical is not necessarily some absolute rule about what is logical. You can just consider that in this moment I was predisposed to think that that was logical, and perhaps for good reason. But persuasion classically has three legs: ethos, logos, and pathos. Right. Still a pretty good guideline. Yeah, we should actually make sure we go into that in the thinking section. Okay. Ethos, logos, pathos. Logos being rules of logic, right? Right. So I would argue that ethos and pathos. Okay, well, ethos was is that emotion? No, that's pathos, right? Ethos is like authority almost. So ethos doesn't. How does ethos not fall down to logic? Ethos, pathos, logos. Pathos appeals to their emotions, and logos appeals to their reason. Trust by establishing the speaker's credibility. So yeah, I would say that we need to take notice that the same type of feeling that happens because of ethos happens because of logos, and then because these are emotional fundamentally, that they're all similar to pathos. Like what you're doing when you're creating a like an argument that feels logical is not explicitly appealing to their emotions, but you're pulling on their emotions. Like, most fundamentally, like if we were to actually look at what's happening when you feel that is logical, similar, like all this stuff comes down, all three of these come down to emotion. This is what I was hoping for in where is this, the thinking. This is what, like, we're gonna have to have this video about rationality is emotional, how our sense of rationality is affected by our affective physiology. This is something that Damasio points, I already said this, but Damasio points out with the somatic marker hypothesis. And I'm sure we'll be able to find a lot more on this very topic. Also, these biases point out the very like that very truth as well. These biases are pointing out that at the end of the day, we don't think logically, we think emotionally, and often it benefits us for our emotional thinking to feel rational, right? Like to like we can conceptualize what we're feeling as rational when we have certain patterns of thoughts, and that allows us to you know, make more sophisticated rules about what ought to be rational or what is rational and what is logical. Um, Pretty good guy. Logos being rules of logic. I'm refreshing myself now. Modes of persuasion. I still think those are good guidelines for practically persuading, but we're trying to look at this in the other end. Like when we're persuaded by something, when we think something is logical. I have something else to do. Out of curiosity, when are you going to stop live streaming today? Probably very soon. I know I said that like recently, but I think like maybe 5-10 minutes. Ethos being authority, right? If you want to change someone's mind, appealing to logic will do nothing. You got to appeal primarily to pathos, maybe some ethos. Roman senator style, right? Got it. What we experience when we're persuading something is true. When we're persuaded something is true, right? And we can think about persuasion not necessarily as like, oh, you just did this whole argument, you persuaded me. Like, fundamentally, this is like, you know, when I see something and I see it's like when I see this as a pen, I mean, you could say that I was persuaded by the stimuli here. I was persuaded by what just happened. But we could also think about this as just what we infer. We can think about this just as what we feel. Yeah, we can conceptualize this in many different ways. But really, what's happening is just some chemical magic that's happening in our brain. Chemical and electro or electrical electric. I don't think I would say electrical. Electric magic. Okay, normative authority aligning with anti-psychologism. However, the document refutes right. The document refutes the idea that logic is merely subjective whim. It introduces a normative structure to explain why logic feels binding and objective, moving towards a view that resembles social or pragmatic anti-psychologism. So the document argues that we do not possess a preloaded dictionary of semantic relations. Instead, logical rules are learned through social conditioning and, what I describe as the negotiation of shared meaning. So, yeah, we learn these things. These things become internalized. They become conditioned as we literally act things out. This negotiation is regarding like when I'm saying something and then you say something back. We're kind of both honing our own understandings, leveraging communication as our way to really make that process much more sophisticated and precise and nuanced. The art of logic. This is us thinking about logic in a way that is normative rather than just simply semantic. So it reframes semantic relations. For example, A is not B as normative rules. One ought not apply the concept cat in such a way that it is also a dog. To violate logic is not just to think differently. It is to make a quote-unquote mistake within the shared rules of human intelligibility. But the way that we point this out is the rules are always internal. Like, it's always subjective. So, like, it's hard for me to, like, break my own rules. However, when, something comes up where now I have two things that contradict each other, I need to figure out what the rules actually are. And I need to resolve this issue. Because these things are breaking each other's rules. Same way with, like, this is how we can think about confirmation bias, where, something's coming up that would give me cognitive dissonance, so I'm gonna shy away from that. But this thing, goes really great with what I already understand. So I'm gonna really look to that. I might that like you might find like confirmation bias tells you that you might find something more logical because it agrees with what your understanding is. Like that's the whole point of that of what that bias is fundamentally doing. So certainty as contingency, even deductive reasoning is described as speculative and contingent upon shared norms and explicit relations. So there's a lot happening here with 2 + 2 = 4, where we understand what each symbol here is doing and what the broader context of what these symbols are doing. And you could argue that, yeah, but mathematically, like 2 is a thing that exists in the world, and it's like fair enough. Like we've built the ability to conceptualize that things can exist beyond ourselves. However, what's really happening here is us experiencing this, and so we are. It's only just our emotional, affective experience of these contents that feel objective. They feel non-psychological in the sense that they would exist whether or not someone was here to perceive them. However, it's just the experience that actually like exists, in a fundamental sense. Its objectivity is derived from the stability of the shared framework, not a transcendent reality independent of human minds. The pragmatic synthesis. The document resolves this tension by framing objective truth not as an external entity, but as an internal commitment. Truth as a standard of correctness. We implicitly take objective truth to exist. So this is pointing out that each person implicitly takes objective truth to exist in how they recognize anything in the world. Like for me to recognize that this is a pen, I need to recognize that something can be. And so that we're just conceptualizing this. But this is like, we're conceptualizing how our brain works inherently. Like really what we're describing is predictive processing and active inference. Like our brain is always going towards some prediction about how it should be behaving and what things are. And what things is really like an activity of the mental. Like it's us creating words in our brain, or it's making us feel certain ways in connection to certain images that it reveals to our conscious awareness. So yeah, we're just conceptualizing that. Yeah, that things that we take to be true serve as the standard of correctness to which we hold ourselves responsible inherently. So yeah, if this pen were to explode in front of me, then like the standards for what this thing was have been broken. Like this isn't just a pen anymore. Like I don't know what this is if this thing just explodes right now. And what I'm really describing is just, once again, just describing, I'm conceptualizing just a way of thinking about these things. But really what's going to happen is when this thing explodes, my brain is going to do a bunch of things. My salience network is going to flag that something really crazy has just happened, and then I need to put my attention to it. And there probably is going to be a little bit of fight or flight. There's going to be a lot of like, okay, should I be... tending to any wounds or whatever needs to happen now. Pragmatic realism. The document suggests that while our logic is structured, it is not arbitrary. It is evolved because it works. Scientific and logical methods are cultural innovations that recalibrated our internal sensor for rationality because they proved reliable in minimizing prediction error in the physical world. So that's a huge deal. It's like, we can't just say that like scientific method and logical truths are merely subjective or like merely made up. Like these things worked, and these things have evolved with our own physiology in such a way that it's very easy for us to learn these things. Like it's very easy for us to learn. Like even though humans had to like, even though humans shared the same biology for many, many, many years, we have a culture today that allows us to be much more quote unquote logical, or what we would describe as logical today, than obviously we thought, or we would think that people from 3,000 years ago were. So these are cultural innovations. Once internalized, they're basically calibrating our internal sensor for what is rational. They're also calibrating how we communicate and how we think, etc. Got it. Touch to reconcile that with the experience of mathematics. Am I going to raid out now? Raid out. I don't think I'm going to raid, but I'm probably going to end. A very idealistic experience of truth and falsehood, but to an extent subjective, like that Twitter dude who claims 1 + 1 = 3 or whatever it is. Tough. Tough to reconcile that with the experience of mathematics. Right, yeah, the point is that we are still beholden to norms. Just because things are culturally, like, brought up, that doesn't mean that they don't have a hold over the way that we think. Pragmatic realism. Oh, do I know what pragmatic realism actually is? Because these labels get me in trouble every time. That combines the pragmatist idea of practical consequences with the realist belief that the world exists independently of our minds. Yeah, so I wouldn't hold this like. I wouldn't hold these as like truth statements about the world. There's so much ambiguity in all of these, in both of these, that I, you know, even though this thing says pragmatic realism, that's not like something that I'm gonna like, something I'm going to commit to, because it does get us into trouble. It's too ambiguous. But yeah, the thing with math is like, it is, not only is it like widely understood right now, such that if you were to try to argue that math is not real, like, you would get a lot of negative feedback, in the sense that things would happen such that you would feel negative emotion. And so it's not like culture is a house of cards. Like, these things are part of how we are situated in a world of meaning. Like, we will, yeah, we have to navigate with these norms. When we like, you know, break norms, we're going to be, you know, pushed back either by the physical world or by other people, which is effectively the physical world as far as our sensory organs are concerned, as far as our brain's concerned. Yeah, like, we build truths that work, and when we say work, we mean reduce prediction error and negative emotions. So in another sense, it builds up our ability to predict what's going to happen. So math is quite effective at that. Like, we've built a conceptual normative rule set that allows us to represent things that we're experiencing in the world in ways that allows us to communicate and predict phenomena quite precisely and effectively. Coherence and consistency feel subjectively different from contradiction and inconsistency. Coherence and consistency feel subjectively different from contradiction and inconsistency. I don't know if I follow what you're implying there, because I imagine you're implying something something profound. I really have to go soon. I'm sorry, Energy Dompter. I keep saying I'm going to end, but then we get in these discussions. I have to blame you for this one. You gave me this final this final prompt that got us talking about all this stuff. We could have ended a little bit ago. But yeah, no, I mean, feel free to head out whenever. There's nothing holding you back. I appreciate you coming in and chilling, and providing recommendations and all that. I think I'll probably just respond to filter your next post if it's coming, and then yeah, I'll probably call it. But yeah, when I'm describing all these things, I'm really trying to talk about this stuff at like the most fundamental level, rather than a like if we were in a context where we're talking about science and we're talking about facts, like then I will talk about facts as if they're real, and I'll talk about truth as if it's something that we can hold about the world. Like I would say it's true that the color of the sun is yellow or whatever, and I'm like leveraging the fact that everyone understands what I'm saying. I'm not gonna, like in certain situations, I'm not gonna be an a-hole about the fact that everything we're doing is linguistic and inferred and all this stuff. But because we're having a discussion about base level philosophy of experience, then I do want to go into that level. If someone makes a non sequitur, it immediately triggers a disagreeable mental sensation. Right. Like, yeah, if I heard someone do that, it would be noticeable to me in such a way where, like literally my physiology is making me notice that. And, it results in this thought appearing in my head that was a non sequitur. An emotional sensation. On the other hand, if someone points out the implication of an agreed upon fact that I hadn't considered, I have an aha moment. The light goes off above my head. Eureka. Yeah. Yep. So we pointed out in part 1 that not all prediction error is negative. Right? There's a lot of like when what happens exceeds our expectations, it could be a very positive experience, and that results in the release of different neuromodulators, whether that is dopamine or serotonin or whatnot. Yeah. So like, yeah, our affect, like the emotions that come out, is not like at a different, or it's not like competing with like, I think predictive processing is like kind of is like the lowest level you could go, like active inference and stuff like that, and then the affect comes from that, and that's the stuff that we can now use to bridge between our experiences of these things and whatnot. But yeah, it's just pointing out that all of our experiences are colored by emotion in some way or another. And yeah, and that feels good. The dopamine, endorphins, whatnot, consistency versus inconsistency, coherence versus contradiction. Right. Yeah, and we do talk about this. The affective, the emotional. What do we say? Emotion-driven plasticity. No, we talked about this earlier. In emotion-driven plasticity, this is cool. We point out that the very emotions that we're experiencing in those moments are affecting how our brain actually integrates that information. So, the like certain types of experiences, like the ones that make us, feel the negative emotion, or ones that make us feel like, oh, that's really something important to look at. Like that's affecting our future learning. Similarly, the eureka moment might affect, learning, leveraging the dopamine as a neuromodulator. So dopamine acts as a learning signal that reinforces neural pathways associated with positive surprise. Norepinephrine, by contrast, is closely tied to detection of novelty, uncertainty, or potential threat, regardless of valence. Its effect is to heighten vigilance and sharpen attention, flagging events as potentially significant. Acetylcholine plays a central role in directing attention and supporting the encoding of new information. Yeah, we go into all these things, and then we go into maybe the experience of these things a little bit differently here when we talk about neuromodulators. So we just mentioned those here, but when do we actually go into I think we'd maybe talk about that in the making sense of experience when we start talking about when things feel, yeah. When outcomes exceed expectations, dopamine tends to increase, reinforcing the behavior and validating the model. When outcomes match expectations, dopamine levels remain stable. When reality falls short of our expectations, dopamine levels decrease, signaling that something may need to change. Norepinephrine heightens alertness in response to surprise. Acetylcholine sharpens attention and learning in novel situations. Serotonin regulates our tolerance for ambiguity, shaping how open or resistant we are to change. Together, these systems influence not just what we learn, but how we feel about learning, how confident, threatened, or flexible we become in response to new meaning. Well said. Thank you very much. Ooh, nice breakdown. Dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, and serotonin. Yep, and that's not all the neuromodulators, but that's just the ones that I wanted to highlight here. But yeah, this neurochemical process helps us understand why we often feel certainty when reflecting on the world. When predictions are confirmed, that success is not only processed cognitively, but is also accompanied by a sense of intuitive fluency, confidence, and clarity. We can think of this affective reinforcement as what gives meaning its felt immediacy. Why certainty feels intuitive rather than merely inferred. This is the feeling of a low energy, stable, and effectively regulated state. Likewise, when our core expectations are violated, the resulting prediction error doesn't just register as informational, it can be experienced as discomfort, doubt, or even distress. In both cases, meaning does not merely appear to us, it is felt. All right. Oh, and then this is what we were talking about with how rationality is emotional. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio's work further explains how the brain uses these felt states to guide our choices. When faced with a course of action, our brain rapidly simulates the potential outcomes and generates an associated visceral bodily feeling for each one. A positive feeling of ease or confidence pushes us towards a decision. A negative feeling of unease or alarm pushes us away. This is the neurobiological basis for our gut instincts, revealing how our most rational decisions are profoundly shaped by the body's wisdom in predicting future states of well-being. Ultimately, we can intuit that our experience of reality is not merely a direct apprehension of some absolute objective reality. It is a felt experience constructed through the recursive interaction of brain, body, and environment. What is happening out there? What was that? That feels like it's like under me right now. All right, maybe this is a good time to end. Lifts up the hood. I think that's a power tool. I don't know. Nice paragraph, thank you. Great rhythm, neuroscientist well-being. Oh right, yeah. The goal of this document is to just pack in, like to densely pack in information in accessible ways, and just to really, like, every paragraph needs to apply a punch. So yeah, this is I've really enjoyed making this. And we now have to do the same with part 2, which is going to be insane because there's so much information for part 2. All right, Energy Dompter, good night. Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. Maybe it's above me, maybe it's below me. I'm not sure. But regardless, it's probably a good time to end. Thank you all for chilling. Thanks for keeping the conversation going. I really enjoy that stuff. And yeah, thanks for guiding the process here. It's going to take a while. It's going to be a lot of work, but I'll just keep at it. So, yeah, nighty night. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.